students. Well, in this video, we will discuss about layouts. What is a layout and what are the different uh, reasons why a good layout, designing a good layout becomes useful and essential for operating and running a factory. And then we will look at the different types of layouts that are available with factory managers and production operators to know what's the right kind of layout that they can design for their product that they're manufacturing. What is a layout? If you want to understand that in a very simple understanding, it would mean how are you going to plan your workstation? How are you going to plan your factory setup where the production is going to take place? Which is basically designing or configuring where your departments, where your work centers, where your workstations are going to be arranged, where machine, material, men are going to be coming and working. So how are you designing, right? So when you look at a factory before a layout is set up, it just be a factory that's just open with just the four walls and a roof on top, right? Now, what are you going to do in that open space? How are you going to utilize it? What are you going to bring it? Where are you going to design and set up your workstation, your machinery? Where will the materials move? Where will it enter from and where will it exit? What is the path that it's going to take? Now, all of those are decisions that we will have to make in while we are designing a layout, right? A good design will help us to assign or apportion machines, equipments, tools, and people, as well as the movement of the material as it goes through the production and the operations process. Now, why is a layout very important? One is a layout becomes very important. A very wisely, thoughtful, effective, and an efficient layout is very essential because there's a lot of money that's going uh, into setting up that particular layout. So if we don't make a wise investment, or we don't make everything in a manner where everything is done and designed and set up in a very foolproof manner in the first instance, then we're going to lose out a lot of money because every time you feel that or you find out that the layout is not configured in the right manner, you want to dismantle it, you want to revamp it, and then you want to reset it up, then it's going to be a costly affair. So you don't want to redo that, and that's why uh, you make a well designed and a well made decision right in the beginning. Secondly, it has long term commitments because an investment that you are making in a layout is it has to help you, or the layout and the facility has to enable you to reap those returns. You need to be running that factory on that layout for the next 1 year or the next 3 years or the next 4 years. And the third is it has significant impact on cost and efficiency. The design of the layout is very significant in terms of how you are operating that entire production process. The time that your product is going to take, right from the time it enters as a raw material and the time that it comes out as a finished commodity depends on the layout. The time that you're taking, the lead time, the time that it takes from moving from one workstation to another workstation, how much of time that you're taking for handling a particular activity, all of that becomes very important. A well configured layout will make sure that the material will move in a very smooth and a seamless manner, and value addition takes place without much of delay in terms of time, without much of delay in terms of any sort of blockage or any sort of an obstacle. So while we are looking at a layout, right, the best decision is to ensure that the physical arrangement of all the resources are well made in that facility where there is maximum utilization of space, and then everything that we want is also assigned and apportioned in the right manner. Facility resource arrangement can significantly affect productivity and quality of the good because a well designed layout will ensure that your productivity is high, will ensure that your efficiency and effectiveness of the work that is done on the layout is also good, and ultimately it's going to result in good quality products and services that are going to come out as an output. There are two broad categories of operations that we can do. One is for intermittent processing and continuous processing, which is in very simple understanding. Is your product going to, is your product having very low features or very low specifications where there is not much of value addition that you need to do, or the kind of input or the work that needs to be done on the material is very minimal. If it's a very standardized kind of a process, and if the volume or the quantity that you want to manufacture is much high. Like say for example, you want to bring out 10,000 units in about 1 hour's time and so on. So that's where we design a layout which is like a continuous processing layout. Very often we use a product layout where all the workstation and the machinery is set up in a manner which is like a one after another. It's designed in a sequential manner. Intermittent processing is mostly for batch-wise production or low volume quantity of goods where the design and the variety changes, which means every good that you're manufacturing, you need to slightly change the setup. You need to slightly bring in different kinds of machinery. You need to alter the workstation. You need to alter or make some changes in the layout. If your product is of that sort of a nature where it goes through a certain different kind of value addition, then you will have to go in for an intermittent processing as such. So you got to know what is the nature of the product and whether at all there is some sort of a requirement in terms of specialized value addition that is needed or a standardized value addition is okay with it. Now, why is a layout very important, or how is your production layout helping you in terms of minimizing cost, helping you in terms of increasing efficiency and effectiveness, yeah, and ensuring that the quality of the output that you're getting at the end of the work, end of the production process is of a good nature. So these are some principles that we've got to keep in mind, which means a layout designer will have to keep these things in mind to make sure that you are incorporating the basic fundamentals of layout management. The first is minimum travel, which is to make sure that the good from the time it enters a raw material as a raw material and it comes out as a finished good, the lead time or the cycle time or the production time must be as minimum as possible. It must take very little time to move from one workstation to another workstation. And there should be no idle time or there should be no lag. Secondly, it has to follow a certain sequence. So the work that is done earlier must become the input for the next workstation. So there has to be a logical sequence in which items are going to be moving. So if you want to cover a shortest distance for your product to be completed or manufactured as a finished commodity, you need to ensure that there is a proper a logical sequence. Third is principle of usage to make sure that the man and the machine and the material is used to the fullest usage, which is absolutely, I mean, for full utilization, which is everything is working at optimum capacity. Your workstation must be working at optimum capacity. Next, we're looking at a principle of compactness to make sure that we are able to put maximum things within that minimum space, not really trying to crowd it, but trying to make sure that there is some sort of an optimal utilization of the space and the process. Principle of safety and satisfaction becomes very important. You also have to keep in mind that along with the machinery, along with all the physical facility and equipment, you have workmen working on the shop floor. You need to make sure that their safety is of utmost concern, to make sure that anything and everything that you are putting over there or installing over there will have to ensure you got to keep the human being or the worker in mind while you're doing it, so that it's not too congested, it's not too crowded, the passage should not be too narrow, and the worker must be you must ensure that the worker has safety gears in place to make sure that he is safe and secure while he does that. The principle of flexibility. So what in case our product is going to undergo a change, or we're going to change the layout because there is a new product that is going to be launched? You got to keep in mind a certain degree of flexibility while you're designing your layout. So if at all there's going to be new machinery or automation, or you're going to bring about a certain change in the production of the product, then we need to make sure that there is a certain amount of flexibility that we bring into the layout. And last of all, we're looking at minimum investment. So how do I achieve all of this? How do I achieve all the benefits or the plus points of what a product or what a production layout can give me, right? How can I achieve the maximum by making sure that I spend very minimum at it? So at a minimum investment, I must be able to set up a layout that helps me or enables me to get long-term returns as long as I'm using the layout for my production process, right? So along with those points, we're talking about the kind of decision which is very similar to what I spoke in the previous slide. One is, if you do not design a proper layout, if there's no proper sequence, or your product is going to go in a zigzag manner without any sort of a logical sequence, and if there is more time that it takes from one workstation to another workstation, and then it back and forth, if it goes through a path that is illogical, then it's going to lead to inefficient operations. So inefficiency automatically leads to longer lead time. Longer lead time can increase the cost of production, right? And there can be high cost and bottlenecks as well. A lot of obstacles that could also emerge if you don't keep in mind. A lot of stoppage can happen, or there can be a breakdown in terms of the production process. So any of these things could possibly alter the nature of your layout. Next, what if you introduce new products and services? Is your layout flexible enough, open enough, and does it have enough room and space to bring in new machinery, bring in automation, or to make those alterations or changes that we're going to make in the layout, right? Is there enough room is a question that we need to ask. Change in the design of products or services, as I told you, if existing products go through a change, the layout automatically will have to go through a change. And lastly, we're looking at accidents and safety hazards to make sure that the worker who is the central of the production, who's at the center of the production process, who's coming day in and day out and manufacturing goods and working in your factory, you have to make sure that that worker is safe, that there are enough safety precautions and mechanisms in place to ensure that the worker is safe and secure and does not injure or harm himself while he is doing his job. Changes in environment or other legal provisions, which could be like changes in the laws or changes uh, in the Factory Act, which requires certain changes to be made. So there must be certain, I mean, you must think about it that anything of the sort could also be possible. Changes in methods, tools, machinery, equipment. So the layout must also be in a position to accommodate those changes. Changes in volume. What if the output increases, or what if there is an intermittent increase in demand and we need to manufacture more goods, or what if we are able to, what we need to run the layout in maybe 3 shifts. So is there enough room? Does your layout have that sort of a flexibility, and can you adjust to that new kind of requirement and demand is also another question that we need to look at. And finally, as I said, the worker is the center of the production process. You need to make sure that the morale, the energy levels, the motivation of your worker has to be good enough for him or her to be coming and working and ensuring that that they are able to work in a very energetic and happy manner, right? So coming to this slide as to what are the different types of layout, right? The first type of layout that can be very easily understood, or which majority of companies want to go in for, is called a product layout. A product layout is a layout for goods which are standardized, which have a standard variety, which have a high volume, where goods are going to be manufactured in bulk, and there is not much of a variety, or not too many changes are involved in the value addition of that particular product. So for those type of goods, we go for a product layout. A product layout is where the entire workstation or the entire setup of machinery is laid out in a sequential manner. It all goes in a very sequential manner from workstation 1 to 2 to 3, and it keeps going on in a straight line. So it's a logical flow. If you follow the logical flow of from the time when the good enters as a raw material to the time it comes as a finished commodity, you will see value addition taking place, or the good going through a certain change at each of these places. A process layout is for those type of manufacturing or those type of goods which requires high degree of specification. It's not the same thing, same kind of a job or a value addition that is done on a product. It needs a difference, right? So these are for high variety of goods, and the volume is very low, where the product needs to go in from different processes, and it's not the same machinery that can enable you. So here what happens is we classify these layouts into departments, or there are these different buildings in the manufacturing unit, like where you have a welding unit where all the welding related machinery would be there, and then any product that has to go and get a welding job will go to that, or a painting unit, or an assembly unit, or a tool room, or a die cast. So you have different sections, and each of these different sections will only do that sort of a specialized kind of a work, and you'll have all kinds of that machinery aligned over there. So any product or any value addition that needs to be done on a semi-finished item will go in for that particular job, and that section will take up that particular job and complete it. Third, we have something called a fixed position layout. In a fixed position layout, In the product and the process, what happens is the material is moving to the factory or to the place where the production layout is set up. In a fixed position layout, what happens is the product does not come there, whereas it's the other way. The material, the equipment, the machinery, and including manpower, all of that will go to the place where the good is built. So it could be a building. When you're constructing a building, everything has to go to that particular place because it's got to be built on that particular site, right? So it's very similar to something like that. So you will have to move those. It could be a construction of a bridge or maybe a highway, right? Or shipbuilding. Very often shipbuilding is also like that. You need everything has to go to that yard where the ship is being built and so on. So everything has to be moved to that particular land. That's called a fixed position layout, and things cannot move uh, to the place where you want it to be moved as such. And lastly, we have something called a combination layout. A combination layout could be a combination of a product and a process. So generally, it's the product and the process that comes in. So there could be certain portion of your product being manufactured using a product layout. It goes in a sequence. Certain other aspect or another part of the manufacturing could go through a process layout. So you could do that, or it could be a process and a fixed. You do a certain kind of work like a semi-finished or a prefabricated work where it's already done in a product or in a process layout, and then you take it to the fixed position where that has to be fitted or that has to be installed, and it becomes part of the product as such. So that's where we look at a combination of the layout. So these are basically the four general types of basic layouts that you could see. So depending on the nature of your product, depending on the volume, depending on the variety, and depending on the design logic that is involved in the layout aspect, many things that we discussed in the earlier part of the video. So keeping all of that in mind, a factory owner and a production manager will have to think about what's the right kind of layout that will be helpful and useful for setting it up, and then making sure that the firm is able to get those kind of returns that they're looking for by installing the right kind of layout.